you served in the whole, I don't even know what this last war, it was basically after 9/11, and then, Afghanistan and the Taliban and all
Well,
this. Oh,
we measured by campaign.
okay.
So it was Operation Enduring Freedom, um, Operation Northern Defense. But that was all in the same area. We just had different campaigns going on in that area.
So which
You know,
campaign were you a part of during the second war?
I was Operation Enduring Freedom for
Okay.
the most part.
Okay. And so my question to you is, because obviously, we just pulled out basically of Afghanistan, which is very controversial, right? And there's opinions on both ends, and I heard a really good opinion as far as from a guy named Patrick Bet David, who has his own podcast as well. He's from Iran. Him and his family are refugees from Iran, and his point of view was like, once you go there, you can never leave, because do you close a jail down? Like, do you ever close a prison down? You know what I mean?
Mhm.
And then there's the other view where obviously, that wasn't it was never our issue in the beginning. It's like, let them be, let them do their thing. As someone who is former military, as someone who has served, as someone who's been there, and even fought camel spiders and all kinds of other stuff, right? What's your kind of, just, I guess, view on take on us pulling out of Afghanistan, and now the Taliban kind of taking over real quick, and what's your point of view on the whole situation that went down over there?
Um, it's like amputating a leg without anesthetic,
Okay.
an infected leg. Oh, it's gonna hurt regardless. But there's certain things that need to be done. Now, were there better ways to do it? Not gonna doubt. Yeah, that's undeniable. And that's the best example I can give. Is amputating an infected leg without anesthetic. It had to be done. Were there better ways to do it? Did we wish we did it differently? Yes. Did it have to be done? Yeah, yeah, it did. Um, and I don't mean to say that as a cop out to not giving a real answer, but I'll give you a better example. When I was in Kuwait, I remember talking to the Kuwaiti Air Force guys, and they would, whenever the A-10 flew overhead, they would laugh and point up. And I asked him, I said, well, why are you pointing to that? He said, and he explained to me in the best way he could. He was like, when the A-10 would fly over when Iraq invaded them, the A-10 would destroy their tanks and their bunkers and all of that. And the Iraqi Air Force the Iraqi guys would jump to the ground. So whenever because the A-10 is a very quiet aircraft. So as it flew over, when they saw that shadow going across the ground, they scattered. So if you ask the Kuwaiti people, well, should we leave? They're going to say, hell no. They're going to say we should have been there. We should have stayed there. If you ask some of the Iraqi people, they're going to say no because I lost so many family members during the bomb. So I can't be the one to say, I can't look at it just from the American point of view of like, oh yeah, it was all perfect. It was great. We did this, or, oh yeah, we should never have been there. What I will say is that there are whole swaths of people that were happy we were there and those that weren't happy. But as far as us as the military, there could have been a better way we left.
Yeah, I like that answer. I like the analogy a lot.
It had to happen.
Yeah, and honestly, from my point of view, when the war started, I didn't even wonder. I didn't. I was like, why is this even happening? Like, it's not even our war to begin with, right? But it's kind of like, America's famous for always getting involved in other places. A lot of times when there's a financial interest involved, right? Because there's other parts of the world that we could get involved in to help people, and we don't, right? But that's not the topic of the subject. But I think it's kind of like, yeah, I think your analogy was best. I mean, we stuck our leg in, it got infected, and you have to amputate it, or the rest of the body's gonna end up probably
Yeah.
getting infected and die, right?
And it was just going to get worse. And I don't mean to say that in the sense of it was that region's fault, um, because I don't I don't have the knowledge to say definitively what the problem was.
Right.
We could talk about weapons of mass destruction. We talk about never being there. All of those things play a huge factor. But when it comes to just getting out, it was gangrene and it was spreading. And I don't know what we could do.
Yeah.
I don't know what we could have done.
I think I understand what you're saying, and the situation we're in now is like, okay, we went in even though we shouldn't have, or maybe we should have. Who cares? Whatever. Where it is now, it had to be done. You know what I mean? And
it did.
Yeah. Okay.
Like I said, and I'll never disagree with the fact that it could have been done differently. Of course, yes. You had Afghan individuals who were, holding on to planes. They did that for a reason.
Yeah.
A lot of people are like, oh my God, they're crazy. No, and that's where, growing up in the South and hearing about certain things that people did during civil rights to get away.
Right.
We had that opportunity. They didn't. So when you just look, oh, they're crazy, trying to jump onto a plane. No, they weren't. They were desperate.
Right.
A lady who will give her baby to a service member. I don't know if you have children, but when you get to a point to where you're like, I will give my children away so they cannot deal with the mess that I know for a fact I'm going to have to deal with. So that's why I say it could it have been done differently? Yeah.
Yeah.
But how much longer do you wait while it infects, and it gets worse and worse and worse?
Yeah. Yeah.
You have a whole country overrun by a terrorist organization.
Yeah.
It was spreading. So it is nothing. At some point, you had to make a decision on, do we stick around here or do we fix another mess that we've made?
Right.
And
isn't the biggest, I don't know the word, I have the word, but the reason they hate us the most is because we are in their land. I think that's kind of like the thing, like we're occupying what they feel is we shouldn't be there. Does that make sense?
Let me say this. That's a huge misconception.
Oh, is it? Okay.
Yeah. No, the hate doesn't come from occupation. It comes from behavior.
Okay.
Certain policies that they put in place once we were there, because us as the military members, we're only doing what we're told.
100%. I want to make sure we knock on that, because you guys are just the ones doing your job, right? It's the leadership that sends you guys.
Took our oath, and we said, this is how long, this is what we're going to do, defend our enemies, foreign and domestic, blah, blah, blah. We have said that.
And thank you for your service, by the way, and all the military members out there.
Thank you. No problem. Thank you so much. I know how many foreign nationals I've come in contact with. No animosity, no anger. But they'll tell us, but my cousin up the street whose house was raided and blah, blah, blah. Now he's pissed. He's not coming at me, oh, you dirty American. No. But he is thinking about his family members, his friends, his, people he truly respected, pillars of his neighborhood who were mistreated or who had something unfair happen to them. And he's telling me in hopes that, look, y'all supposed to be here helping us, and this is how we feel. This is what's going on. So I can tell you it isn't merely being there, it's how we conduct ourselves while we're there.
Yeah, and then we're talking about terrorists too. These are like extreme people of any culture, right? Like we have extremists here, and you talked about the civil rights movements, right? Like the racism and all that was not like a normal person. That was an extreme person, right? That's abusing some type of ideology, right? Or they've been taught for years and years and generations, right? Ignorance or whatever you want to call it. But when we talk about the Taliban and stuff, that's like an extreme version hiding behind, I guess, the Muslim religion and the Quran, right? Or they're just operating like Old Testament versus New Testament, right? It's like, yeah,
Yeah.
haven't, they're operating in very old school type ways, and they're using it to their advantage, where women are basically worthless, and the men are dominant, and you have to abide by these certain rules.
Well, yes and no, because understand there are women that wear their hijab, they wear their burqa, they wear all of that. They want to.
Hmm.
Some. I'm not trying to sell this, image here. Everybody's happy, but they, some of them, that shows their devotion and their commitment to Allah or their God. I'm not gonna knock that because I just like I wouldn't walk up to a nun and say, "Why are you wearing that?" I wouldn't walk up to a priest and be like, "Bro, that's a dress." You look like whose ass you gonna kick? So to look at it and just think, because they're wearing this. I know women here. They've come to America. They've left Afghanistan. They've left Saudi Arabia, wherever. A lot of that they still wear. That's their now. It's their personal choice. I respect that regardless. Where I have the issue is that I'm not trying to go on much of a soapbox, but where I have an issue is that there's an old Goody Mob song where Big Gipp says, "It's like walking in my house and not wiping your feet on the rug." That's, I feel like, regardless who's a terrorist or regardless what country we go into, don't walk into the house and not wipe your feet on the rug.
Gotcha.
That's, what you do is what you're held accountable for. That's an accountability piece and respect. So worry about what you could have done differently first, because those are the only actions you control. Those are the only actions you control. And so when we talk about, well, this is infested with terrorists, yeah, but they're still not your house. The way you walk in there, the way you behave, the way you're, the policies that you implement that shape how we conduct ourselves, that should be the most important thing. That's me, because we are held accountable for what we do, not for what others do.
Right. So my last question, and then we could switch gears, is: do you think uh, us as a nation is safer, less safe, or kind of neutral with the current situation that's going on now in Afghanistan that we're gone?
I think it's worse because we're almost back where we started.
Okay.
I don't see the situation. Okay, the Taliban is where they were when we overran them.
Yeah.
Um, the government is, the president left. He was like,
Yeah. He
all right,
bounced.
no, I'm good. I did all I could. I'm good. What's different than when we first were like, we're going to go over there and, take down the Taliban.
Yeah.
Then I think we basically did 20 years of, now we're back where we started.
Yeah. And my biggest thing about what happened and how it went down is that you have a whole entire generation of people that did not know what's happening now. Like an
Mm-hmm.
entire democratic 20 years of Afghanistan, or somewhat democratic, right? And now
Mm-hmm.
it's like it would be like going back to the civil rights movement of the 60s. Like all the progress that we made for all these 40 years would just be wiped out, and now we're back to where we were back in Birmingham.
I'd be in Afghanistan with that guy who was telling me, "Hey, why don't y'all act right?" I'm like, "Hey, can you move over, Malik? I need to lay down." it, I, it would be horrible, but yeah, that's the best example I can give.